How a crowded sky ruined a historical airshow. A midair wing collision over Dallas. An aviation catastrophe explored. On November 12, 2022, a horrifying midair collision shook the aviation community. Two historic warbirds collided during the Wings Over Dallas Airshow, leaving witnesses in disbelief and experts searching for answers. What went wrong on that fateful day? Was it hardware failure, human error, or something else entirely? This documentary delves into the technical and procedural missteps that led to this tragic event. Join us as we uncover the chilling details, analyze the flight paths, and look at historical parallels to understand how this could have been avoided. Wouldn't you mind subscribing to the channel already? Your support motivates me to bring you more fascinating stories like this. The day that shook Dallas. The Wings Over Dallas Airshow was meant to celebrate aviation history, but by the end of the day, it made history for all the wrong reasons. The airshow featured restored World War II aircraft, including a B17 Flying Fortress and a P63 Kingcobra. These iconic planes, with decades of service behind them, were performing intricate aerial maneuvers when disaster struck. The B-17, a heavy bomber, was in a left-hand turn, aligning with the 1,000-foot safety line, when the P-63 suddenly entered its flight path. The collision was catastrophic. Both aircraft disintegrated midair, plummeting to the ground. The aviation world was stunned. Could aging hardware have played a role in this tragedy? Was this a case of outdated hardware failing at a critical moment, or was human error to blame? The role of the air boss. Who was orchestrating this aerial ballet, and how did it go so disastrously wrong? The air boss, positioned at the heart of the airshow operations, had a critical job, coordinating flight paths, ensuring safety, and timing pyrotechnics. But unlike air traffic controllers, air bosses are not required to follow FAA standards. On that day, the air boss was overwhelmed. 8 aircraft in complex maneuvers, planes taxiing, and others landing. Could the lack of standardized protocols for air shows have contributed to this chaos? While you are enjoying this documentary, wouldn't you mind subscribing to the channel? Your support keeps me motivated to bring you more intriguing aviation content. Did a breakdown in communication between the air boss and pilots seal the fate of the B-17 and P-63? Aging warboats. A technical analysis. These planes were built to survive combat, so why couldn't they survive an airshow? Both the B-17 and P-63 were decades old, maintained meticulously by the commemorative Air Force. However, even with the best maintenance, aging materials can fail under stress. From metal fatigue in the airframe to outdated avionics, were these aircraft flying on borrowed time? Historical parallels. Like the 1994 crash of a B-17 in Georgia due to wing spar failure, raise questions about the risks of flying vintage planes in public displays. Was maintenance oversight a ticking time bomb for these aircraft? The fatal turn. Flight path errors. What really happened in those critical seconds before the collision? Reconstructed flight data shows the P-63 turning sharply into the B-17's path. Was it a misjudgment by the P-63 pilot or confusion caused by unclear instructions from the air boss? This isn't the first time flight path miscommunication has led to tragedy. The 1993 collision of 2 planes at an airshow in Fairford, UK, had similar circumstances. Multiple aircraft flying close patterns, without clear separation. Was the pilot at fault, or was it an unavoidable blind spot in the P-63's design? Design flaws and blind spots. Could the P-63's design have doomed the flight before it even began? The P-63 Kingcobra's cockpit design has a notorious blind spot, especially during sharp turns. Pilots have limited visibility below and behind them, making it difficult to see a larger aircraft like the B-17. This design flaw likely contributed to the tragedy. Wouldn't you mind subscribing to the channel? Your support encourages me to uncover more stories like this. What lessons can modern aviation learn from this design failure? The human factor. Could better training and clearer protocols have prevented this tragedy? Airshows rely heavily on see and avoid protocols, which depend on pilot judgment. But in a high-stress environment with multiple aircraft, this system is far from foolproof. Were the pilots adequately briefed on safety procedures? How does the FAA regulate airshows, and were those regulations followed here? The airshow environment, risky by design? Could the airshow setup itself have played a role in this tragic collision? Airshows are inherently high-risk environments, with aircraft performing intricate maneuvers in tight spaces. While the FAA mandates a minimum separation distance between performers and spectators, there's less oversight on how pilots coordinate their movements during complex displays. The Wings Over Dallas Airshow adhered to the standard 500-foot and 1,000-foot crowd lines. But did the compressed flight paths and simultaneous performances create a recipe for disaster? Historical comparisons, such as the 2002 Sknyliv Airshow crash in Ukraine, underline the dangers of high-density performances. Were airshow safety protocols robust enough, or did systemic flaws leave room for this catastrophe? Pilot experience, a double-edged sword? Did the pilot's experience contribute to the tragedy, or did it give them a false sense of security? Both pilots in the B17 and P63 were seasoned veterans, with extensive flight hours and familiarity with their respective aircraft. However, experience can sometimes lead to overconfidence, particularly in dynamic environments like airshows. In this case, did the P63 pilot underestimate the speed and trajectory of the B17? Similar errors have occurred before, such as the 1988 Ramstein Airshow disaster, where misjudged maneuvers led to a deadly collision. Could stricter pre-show rehearsals and training have prevented this accident? The aftermath, chaos, and control. How did the air boss manage the chaos in the critical minutes after the crash? The midair collision immediately created a chaotic and dangerous environment. With debris falling from the sky, other aircraft in the show had to be diverted to avoid further collisions. The air boss, already overwhelmed before the crash, now faced the monumental task of maintaining order while ensuring the safety of the remaining pilots and spectators. Radio chatter from the air boss revealed the intense pressure of coordinating a safe response. Historical incidents, like the 1952 Farnborough Airshow crash, demonstrate how quick decisions in the aftermath can prevent additional casualties. If you appreciate this content, don't forget to subscribe for more aviation analysis. Did the air boss's response mitigate further danger, or did it reveal deeper flaws in airshow operations? FAA regulations and oversight. How do the FAA's airshow regulations measure up, and were they followed on that fateful day? The FAA imposes strict guidelines for airshows, including minimum separation distances, pre-show briefings, and performance plans. However, enforcement often relies on event organizers. At Wings Over Dallas, these regulations were reportedly followed, but the collision raises questions about their adequacy. Could tighter rules on airshow choreography or mandatory use of advanced avionics have prevented this tragedy? Similar regulatory gaps were highlighted after the 2007 Reno Air Races crash, prompting changes in safety protocols. Will this incident lead to stricter oversight, or will the lessons be forgotten as air shows continue? Let's have your thought in the comment section. Historical parallels, lessons from the past. This wasn't the first midair collision during an airshow, but have we learned from past mistakes? From the 1951 flagship Detroit collision to the 1988 Ramstein disaster, aviation history is dotted with similar tragedies. Each incident has led to introspection within the aviation community. But are those lessons consistently applied? Examining these parallels reveals recurring themes: inadequate separation, overwhelmed air bosses, and the challenges of maintaining safety during high-stakes performances. The Wings Over Dallas collision fits this pattern, begging the question: are airshows inherently too dangerous to continue in their current form? Can modern technology eliminate these risks, or will history keep repeating itself? Preventing the next tragedy. What needs to change to ensure that air shows remain a celebration of aviation, not a stage for disaster? The Wings Over Dallas collision underscores the need for innovation in safety measures. Some possible improvements include enhanced communication tools, mandating the use of advanced avionics and collision avoidance systems, even for vintage planes. Stricter pilot training, regular mandatory rehearsals and certifications for airshow performances. Updated regulations. The FAA could impose stricter limits on aircraft density and flight paths during shows. Increased air boss scenarios. The aviation community must balance preserving history with ensuring the safety of pilots, spectators, and other participants. The lessons from this tragic collision should guide future decisions. If you found this documentary informative, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Your support motivates me to bring you more captivating aviation stories. Conclusion. While the Wings Over Dallas collision was a devastating event, it has sparked crucial conversations about airshow safety and aviation regulations. By learning from these tragedies, we can ensure that the skies remain a place of inspiration rather than sorrow.